Constructive.
Second negative. The comment that Herman just brought up about that there are a lot of downtime. These contractors, yes, they are used in non-combat situations, but the most critical point that they're used in their main focus job of these type of contractors. There's military combat contractors, and there's also non-combat contractors. A lot of these non-combat contractors are very critical in allowing the combat troops that we have in American troops to be able to perform their job. If these guys are fighting at their life, time is not just something they can spend there. Every second can mean the difference between life and death. So, yes, at times there are places where they have plenty of time, but in many times that we really need these contractors, there really is not that time. Also, they talked about cost and that these guys are more expensive. Quote here from David Eisenberg from the International Peace Research Institute in Oslo. The use of PMC, or private military contractors, receives less attention than the use of regular troops. This reduces the political cost of using force. Bluntly put, if someone is contracting to the war effort but is not on active duty in the U.S. military, nobody beyond his or her immediate family cares if they get injured or killed. By contrast, the death of even a single infantryman or Marine routinely winds up on the front page of major papers. Basically saying, if these contractors have a less political cost, which also can relate to monetary costs. They don't end up in the news as much. Like you hear every day on the news, military soldiers get killed or whatever. But it's much smaller political cost for these contracting soldiers. Also, another quote about cost from Business Week magazine: contractors are more nimble at mobilizing and paring back their forces than a huge military bureaucracy. So by implementing these, putting all this stuff in the federal government and reducing contracting would make a larger military bureaucracy. A recent study by the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office concluded that in 2004, the U.S. reduced its costs by 1/3 for feeding and housing troops by paying one contractor to do the work, a saving of nearly $3 billion. That's a tremendous amount of money. So all the things you say about expending costs, I mean, these things by one guy can save $3 billion. Such findings point to the conclusion that even with a lot of fraud and waste, contracting still pays off. These guys, they're still necessary, and we need to have them here. I also like to bring up a thing that my partner also said about passing legislation. What he meant to say is that these military contractors and the military weapon system builders, such as Lockheed Martin and things like that, they're spread out all over 53 places that are owned in the United States. Every single state, along with Puerto Rico and 2 other territories the United States owns. All these places have representatives in Congress and in the Senate and in their state legislators. Trying to pass a bill would have to you'd have to get all these people to be on board to pass this law. That would hurt their individual counties or whatever region they represent, because you're taking away jobs and you're putting it in one area. That takes away the entire growth of the nation by each person's personal economy and their personal monetary amount of money they have, and putting it all in one area, reducing these things. So these representatives from Congress and the Senate or whatever else it's from, they would not be willing to vote on such and pass such a legislation you have. So your mandate is not realistic, or even if it did pass, it would have to be changed or compromised. So your original bill would have to go through a lot more things because they're not interested in putting this in the first place.
Okay. Now we go to affirmative cross-examination.
Do I have to introduce myself again?
No.
So like you said before, contractors may save $30 billion, but they spend like $112 billion. So what good is
They're
that?
necessary for the American troops to be able to perform their jobs.
But isn't there a cheaper way to do that?
Do you know the way that's cheaper to do that?
We don't have to update the equipment every single year. Like we could use last year's models and they still would get the job done.
Are you aware that the U.S. Army has new technologies now that can by the force protection company that have proven to have no fatalities when they go over IED bombs, saving thousands of lives on over thousands of attacks? And also, are you aware that they have new laser technologies that they can shoot down missiles and stuff like that without the threat of having particles and shrapnel and things like that go into crowded areas? They can save tons of lives in crowded areas. So these things are totally necessary to save lives.
Alright, but what, we have companies that are completely unnecessary and are a threat to like innocent people. Like, okay,
Do you
first
agree
off,
with that?
yeah, Blackwater.
Okay.
Like since 2005, they've been involved in 195 shootings, and in 8 out of the 10 situations, they're the ones who fired first.
Do you know how much they have helped the country?
Rounds over. Guys, you had a minute prep time. Couple things to think about.
Wait.
No, don't worry about it. I'll tell you afterwards. Go. You have a minute.
How long are the rebuttals?
2 minutes.
Wait, 2 minutes. Sorry, I'm reading an idea that
Oh, yeah.
Up to 2 minutes.
Who goes first?
Feldkamp, first negative. Feldkamp, then first affirmative. Rob, then second negative. Jordan, then second affirmative. Zach. Yeah. Denver, I should say. Sorry, the Zachs are confusing.
Why is it a doorbell?
Thanks, Rob. What do you got?
All right, 2 minutes.
Big issue here is one. Each side is saying that their method of doing things will save money. Most people say that centralizing all the military aspects of the war into the government will save money by not outsourcing. While we are saying that outsourcing will in fact save money. Out of all the contractors, almost 200,000 interact, 20 to 30,000 are used to provide the security. All the other ones provide important and crucial military services to the government itself, including intelligence services and basically doing things so that the government will be more efficient in what they do. They organize all of their own materials. If private military contractors are to pull out correct, then private military contractors will have to be used themselves to do this, because they're the ones that provide all the transportation services to do such thing. This shows the very impracticality of removing the military contractors. Like you said before about the inefficiency of developing new technologies every year. While this may be extremely costly, it is necessary to provide for the security of both ourselves and soldiers in the Middle East, so that we will not have to hear each day about soldiers dying.
First affirmative.